Hey there. Sorry about no proper intro this week. I've been quite busy and feeling a bit under the weather. Earlier in the week, I got my COVID vaccine. I'm feeling pretty good after that. I'm just kind of run ragged. Beyond getting the COVID vaccine, I've also been focused on learning ZBrush for a personal project, as well as I've finally got a game I've been working on for the past few years out into a beta where I'm actually showing people now. If you want to learn more about my game or see what I've been working on in ZBrush or any of my ongoing projects, go ahead and follow me on Twitter. That's usually where I post about this stuff, so just look at the link below and join me there if you want updates. So, today I am working on a Gaslands commission project for a armored vehicle. The person who commissioned this basically just asked for an armored vehicle that looked like it got patched together. So I found this swap vehicle that was a pretty good match, and mostly what I did to the base of the body is I just found better wheels for it. I'm not a fan of just standard street wheels on Gaslands vehicles. It always feels a little out of place, so I went with these big tread wheels. Most of the build work was what you see here. I went through my bits box, found little pieces of plastic that work for metal plating. I judged the size of them on the vehicle, cut them down, estimated the size again, cut them down. This repeated for every single plastic piece that I wanted to put on. It's a very rough kind of doing it, but it works, especially when you have a lot of extra things, so if you mess up, it's not the biggest deal. So once I get them down to size, I find where I'm going to put it on the vehicle, glue one side down to the vehicle, and take my jet lighter that you see here and heat up the other side of the plastic. So all I am doing is applying some heat so that I can bend it to the curvature of the vehicle. There's lots of other ways of doing this. Unless you feel very comfortable, do not play with fire at home. This is just how I do it. I don't suggest other people doing this. And once that is to the proper curvature, I just glue down the other side. This repeats for every single piece of plastic I put on this vehicle. And I don't really bother showing that because of it. It's just the same process over and over again. So, this is what I got after doing that. Looks pretty rough, but at this point the person who commissioned me seemed to like the shape, and I just start priming everything purple. Their only idea for colors at this point was they wanted a purple vehicle, and said I can pretty much do whatever I want with it. So from that purple, I worked on a gradient and went with a dark purple at the base, and then mixed in more black to the purple and went for an even darker purple in the undercarriage and just along a very thin line at the edges of the vehicle. An important thing to know when you're painting is to limit your color palette. The more colors you have on the model, the less new colors feel important. So if you work with a limited 2 colors, 3 colors, every new color you add looks more important. And you can do this by just mixing in tones into your color. So in this case, all I was doing is mixing in white and black because those work with purple, but you can mix in yellows, blues. As long as you're still working with the base color, it looks to fit your palette without changing it too much. So when you then go and add a metallic or something new, it stands out more, it looks more special. So at this point, I'm just putting metallics on all of the metals. I'm usually pretty lazy and just use metallic paint. I don't really do non-metallic metal unless someone pays me to do it or it's a special project to me. It's a lot of work, basically. So here we are. This is with all the metals down and all of the base coats down. So I mixed some more white into the purple that I started with and thinned that down a little. It looks a little jarring, but It's pretty thin, and once acrylic paint dries, it becomes more opaque and you can see through it better. So this actually fits a bit more. All I am doing here is applying a highlight and covering up a bit of this overspray that I got with the metallics. I didn't bother to do that super well because I liked the overspray for some of the extra detail and shading it added to the piece. Once I have that highlight on, I very carefully go back in with a thin brush with straight black and just apply that to a lot of my raised edges to make a nice little raised black edge everywhere. Ultimately, this ended up looking okay. You can do this with different colors, you can choose not to do this, it's just an added piece of detail. I will admit though it was a bit of a pain in the butt. With all of the black lining down, I decided I wasn't a huge fan of how the door was looking and I wanted it to stand out. So again, I just mixed some color into purple and got another shade of purple to work with and changed that. This again plays on the limited color palette. It will be different enough to stand out from all of the other purple, but it won't take away from what is there. This is me just going back and highlighting some of the metal some more. I'm pretty sporadic on my approach of what I detail when. Sometimes I will put highlights on a part of a model and then just go do detail work somewhere else. Sometimes I'll leave highlights until super late. You never know. I was taking a bit of a risk here. I wanted to take a brown color and make some paint chips. With something like this, the more you add, the more it makes sense. And when you start, it doesn't look particularly good. I think ultimately this ended up looking good on the finished model, but you will not know until you're close to finish the effect if you like it or not. So just try things, don't be afraid to try things. It's just paint, you can always repaint it. Even on an important commission, you can always repaint it. For the windows, I just went with a light gray because it stood out more than, say, a black. Once the gray was down while it was still wet, I just mixed in some white to different parts of the windows to apply some highlights. It's not a super complicated window, but it works. With more or less the whole vehicle done, I went back in and did the lights. Looking back on it now, I wish I had done the lights in yellow because I do highlight the area in yellow to show that the lights are active and glowing, and I think yellow on yellow would have looked better. But the person who commissioned this piece ended up liking how it looked, and I'm never going to argue with someone who hires me. Well, unless they're wrong. I will argue with you if you're wrong. And with all but the final details done, I fill in the tires. There's something very satisfying to me when working on vehicles to leave the tires till last. Something about just filling blank space with black paint. I don't know, it's just satisfying. So here I am coming back with my airbrush and I just apply some yellow to the area in spots that light would illuminate. Again, this is what I mean about I wish I had done this with a yellow paint on yellow instead of yellow on red. So I'll be back again, hopefully on time in 2 weeks. Next thing I'm going to be working on is another piece of terrain. If you enjoyed this, leave a comment, hit subscribe. I'll see you again in 2 weeks. Again, if you want to see what I am working on in the future, just look below, follow me on Twitter, and you'll be able to see what I'm working on as I'm working on it. Have a good afternoon. Bye.